In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we are coloring conversations on America's canvas. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We've got Dr. Curtis D. Jasper with us tonight. Dr. Kurt is an author, speaker, educator, psychologist, and human behavior specialist who uses a psycho-spiritual, psycho-emotional, psychosocial, psychoeducational approach to teaching, speaking, counseling, and therapy. Dr. Kurt is a recent recipient of the 2024 Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. He teaches individuals, groups, couples, and families and a cultural-based, non-colonized therapeutic approach to relationship challenges, family dynamic challenges, Black men issues, mental health challenges, and emotional wellness. Dr. Kurt currently works with clients at his Atlanta-based private practice. He is a widely sought-after emotional wellness expert, keynote speaker, and corporate consultant, and is considered by many to be a relevant counselor for the culture. Dr. Kurt is a licensed, ordained interfaith minister and certified master teacher. As a keynote speaker and corporate consultant, Dr. Kurt has worked with prominent corporations such as Microsoft, Hyundai Capital, Pure Insurance, Ceramount, the University of Houston Clear Lake, and the Berg, Black Employee Resource Group, Georgia State University, Georgia Tech, Doxa Business, College Nigeria, My Brother's Keeper, and African American Male Initiative, just to name a few. As a professional speaker, Dr. Kurt has shared insights on various stages, podcasts, panels, and radio shows. His TEDx talk has been chosen as top 5 Black mental health TEDx talks to watch right now. Dr. Kurt holds bachelor's and master's degrees in education and a doctor of philosophy degree in counseling. Dr. Kurt facilitates a bi-monthly in-person men's group, therapy and wellness circle sessions. He's currently the executive director of I Am International Incorporated, a Georgia-based personal development training and consulting organization. He works, rests, and plays in Atlanta, Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring to the floor Dr. Kurt Jasper. Hello, sir. How are you?
Brother Charles King, how you doing?
I'm doing
I'm fantastic. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, man. I'm excited. Thank you.
Oh, yes, sir. Is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we jump into the show?
I forgot I did all of that, man. I was like, who is he talking about, right? Thank you for that.
Hey, one thing, we normally try to have at least someone that does mental health, every week. And we had kind of like hit like a 2-month low where we couldn't get a mental health professional, but I'm happy that you was one that could come on the show at the time that you did.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's been that difficult, Brother King?
Say it again?
To find people?
Well, no, I'm talking about.
You said it's been a challenge to find
the mental health professionals.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, we normally work to try to have one every week. In the beginning of this season, we were able to do that, but we've not had one for a couple of months, I mean.
Got it.
So,
Thank you, man. Thank
let's
you.
jump into the mental health. Can you tell us what inspired you to pursue your career in mental health?
That's a great question. I actually went through about a 5-year period where I struggled with my own mental health and emotional well-being. Went through some tough times starting around 2009, and it lasted till about 2013, almost 14. I got to a point in my life where things just started feeling heavy, right? The economy crashed. I went through a very eventful divorce. Both my parents physically transitioned. It was just a tough time, and I couldn't manage it all emotionally. I didn't know this at the time. And so after trying to force my agenda and make things happen with that amount of burdens on my shoulder without asking for help, I eventually crashed. And part of me becoming a mental health practitioner is I actually had to go through. I went through 5 different therapists, and it was the 5th therapist, Brother Charles, who encouraged me as part of my healing journey, not only get through it and come out on the other side if there is, but to bring along men who look like me. And that's exactly what I did. So I tell people I became a therapist in therapy, like literally. And I thought it was a joke, right? When I sat down and I gave my spiel, and people who've been to therapy, they know how it goes. You sit down and you open up. And it was at the end of that session on my 5th therapist, he encouraged me. He was like, "You ever thought about becoming a therapist?" And I was like, "Nah, man, I'm not here for a new career. I'm not here for career counseling. I'm actually really, really hurting." And it was that therapist who encouraged me as part of my healing journey to really not only practice a few modalities, but to position myself where I could reach back and help brothers who look like me. And he was a white gentleman and so I've spent my second career. I started off in education. So as my second career, I use a combination of teaching mental health well-being, diagnosis and a disorder standpoint, but from an educational standpoint on how we could really sustain mental health and emotional stability for ourselves.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So, like, what was that dynamic like to actually be in therapy and being a therapist? How did that work?
So I hadn't become a therapist, right? And so that was the encouragement that I needed to not only do the healing work, but go back and complete the educational requirements. So it was a twofold. And so as I delved through the research specifically about what is for Black men in particular, I used my education, my research, as well as the healing tools and strategies that the therapist gave me to get to where I am now, quite frankly, Brother King.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me just say, because we're about the community as well, and all about the well-being, the building, the development, and things of that nature. Can you tell us how did it start that you decided when you became a therapist, counselor, psychiatrist, to decide to work with the group of Black men? What made that happen?
I didn't catch that last part at the tail end after you said psychologist, Brother King. Can you repeat that for me, please?
Yes. What made you decide to work with the men of color in the community to as a therapist or as a counselor?
That's a great question. So as a result of going to 4 different therapists, a total of 5, but the previous 4, I realized that it didn't feel right. It wasn't applicable to the uniqueness of being a Black man and the things that I was carrying. They approaches, and they meant well, but their approaches was more on the mental health industry and not on me as a Black man living in this world at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So I find commitment to be, culturally irrelevant. Feel right.
Mm-hmm. Are you having internet issues?
I don't think so. I could hear you clear.
Your screen keeps like it's shaking or whatever have you, and then it like kind of pauses. No, so when you was just saying it, can you say that answer again because it didn't actually come through?
Yeah. So after going through seeing 4 therapists, because I mentioned that it was the 5th therapist who encouraged me to go into this as a career, but the previous 4 therapists, Brother Churches, leaned more on the mental health industry and less on me as a Black man. Challenges, right? Their approach was more of a westernized, colonized approach, right? But they spoke more towards the symptoms than the causes, right? They were focused on addressing those to the causes, and it just was a miss for me. And again, I knew they meant well. It just was a miss. So even then, I made it my business to sort of get in the trenches of what it means to be a Black man with mental emotional wellness challenges, mostly induced by racial trauma and tension, oppression, stress and anxiety caused a number of environmental things of that nature, challenges.
Yeah. So, like, what are some of the key issues or common issues that you find with some of your clients, especially I'm talking about from the Black men perspective that you deal with? What are some of the common issues that you've been finding with most?
That's a great question. The issues, like the most common challenge amongst Black men is grief, right? Most people would say trauma. It's actually grief. And grief can be displayed and disguised as depression, anger, rage, resentment. But the average Black man who I serve is going through some of grief and the acute emotions surrounding grief. Mostly grieving things are still living, right? We sort of get when it comes to the deceased and our loved ones passing on. But many of us are not aware that we are grieving things still living, but have left us, right? We have this storehouse of unprocessed and unintegrated grief outside of losing loved ones. Careers, we've lost relationships, we've lost health, we've lost finances, right? All of those require a grief assignment.
So, with that being said, so like, how much work goes into you actually having to, I guess, have them to work to unpack that? How does that process work? Did you hear? No, you didn't hear me, did you? Hello?
Hold on, brother.
Okay. Um, I can't hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. So, what I was asking is, after finding out that a lot of them are grieving and not understanding that grieving process, what is the process that you use to help them to come along to start working with that and to get to that point of relieving that grief?
Yeah, it actually just depends on what they're grieving, and oftentimes they're unsure. They assign it to something that's more, more pronounced, like the loss of a loved one's, not understanding that grieving one thing has the grief and some other things that have not been properly, or should I say, uh, effectively grieved. So the first order of business is the awareness, what grief means, how it's like, feels like, things of that nature. Um, and then accepting it, right? Most of the gentlemen that I work with, they are familiar aspect of the 5 cases, 7 stages of grief, right? You can Google the stages of grief, but they don't actually understand how grief works, and it's really individualized. So it just depends on what they're grieving, and, and if there's some complex and some things that they may have hijacked and not addressed in previous years, right? So it just depends. But my number one priority, Brother Charles, is to what grief is.
So, can you share a pivotal moment in your journey as a mental health professional?
A pivotal point of what? Say that one more time.
A pivotal moment in your journey as a mental health professional.
I don't know if it's on mine or not. Okay. How about now?
Okay. That question again was, can you share a pivotal moment in your journey as a mental health professional?
In my personal journey. So if I heard you correctly, my personal, not professional.
No, no. I said a pivotal moment in your journey as a mental health professional. Can you share a pivotal moment?
Yeah, as it relates to grief, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, grief is one of those, Charles, right? We cannot escape grief. It's part of the lived experience, right? So again, grief is
Okay.
the result and the reactions of the emotions initiated by loss, right? That's grief, generally speaking. It's the feelings and emotions as a result of loss. And when, as a parent, of course, you grieve when your children leave, when you become an empty nester. You grieve.
I think those technical issues there, it's kind of like it's taking you in and out.
I don't know. Luck with that.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. What do you consider to be the biggest stigma surrounding mental health in the Black community?
Okay. Can you hear me before I answer, Brother King?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay. The biggest stigma when it comes to mental health in the
Mental health, yes.
I think I think the stigma nowadays is the old and the perpetuation online, right? We are inundated with still afraid of therapy. There are more people open to therapy now than there ever have been, right? It's pretty trending. So that's no longer a stigma. I think the main stigma is the accessibility, the affordability, and the effectiveness of having culturally competent providers, right? So the stigma of going to therapy or counseling is no longer the case. The actual stigma now is it accessible, right? Is it a luxury? Talk about it. The stigma now, but it's not because Black men in particular are afraid of it. Right? Don't all see the value of it. Most Black men wait too long before they ask or seek a mental health. They just wait too long. Simply, they just wait entirely too long.
Yeah. So, can you tell us, how do cultural factors influence mental health treatment and outcomes?
Significance, great question, right? Cultural, there's determinants, right? Learning place as a result of, so there has to be some cultural compatibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Black men or Black people in general, time to be code switching and want to hear us like we need to be heard. We cannot be in a particular mental health session trying to, we want to express, but we don't want to explain. We want to servicing us to really our individual journeys on what it means to be there's a thing. So we don't want to get real healing work. Cultural competency is critical. The number one determinant on one's healing journey is finding the right practitioner and then connecting with that practitioner.
So, do you think it's still true that for most people in the Black community, that seeking not just mental health but medical attention in general, that they feel much more comfortable dealing with someone that look like themselves compared to others?
Absolutely. And I think that's for all of us, right? We just find comfort in commonality, right? Again, we find comfort in commonality. So we want to get in there and be so not have to work through all of the biases that come up with someone who's from a different journey. So yeah, we went to a Black doctor because we need them to get us. We need them to pick up on the nuances of what it means to be Black, or whatever the whatever the challenge, whatever your thing is. So yes, we don't. That's when we need attention. We don't want to struggle to validate who we are first and then receive it. We want to naturally woo someone who knows when we using our slang or vernacular or what we mean. We need someone in the capacity where they really get who we are because they share.
Can how do the cultural factors influence mental health treatment and outcomes?
How do cultural factors
Influence mental health treatment and outcomes?
Is that the question, brother?
Yes.
It's the expectations, but there's also the biases and the cultural biases that most we we suffer from what's known as the white coat syndrome, right? We don't necessarily sign to rush to get bad news. And we this whole idea of the authorities sort of telling us and just going with it, right? We haven't been taught how to advocate for ourselves as Black people, right? When it comes to nationals as the authority. And even in my situation, I let my clients know I'm not the authority, right? I'm here to help co-create a healing plan, but I'm not here leaning on an industry that wasn't built while considering. And I think that's necessary for Black people. We walk into any type of medical situation, fear of they're gonna find us out, or they're going bad news, or
So when it comes to diverse populations, what approaches do you find to be most effective?
repeat that, Brother Charles.
What approaches do you find most effective when working with diverse populations?
Well, diverse, but if you ask specifically about Black folks, I just being authentic me, showing up in all my Blackness when it comes to working with Black folks. Now I do work with individuals from other cultures and things, and I still show up with my Blackness, right? You ain't getting away from that. I'm going to show up with my hoodie on and my Jordans. I'm gonna be professional, but you're gonna get this black man. I don't care if you Black or not. I'm gonna show up giving you to be who you are articulately by modeling that first.
So, I mean, but are there any factors, that when dealing with other cultures, that are more influential when it comes to working with them than working with Black people?
No, I wouldn't think so. You got something in mind?
No, no, I was just asking.
Like what, Brother King? Talk to me. Like what?
No, wait, no. That's interesting, but I mean, I was just wondering if there was anything that was, as far as like when working with other cultures, if there were different influences and factors that go into that. That's what I'm asking.
If you're asking me personally, like if I was with my office or a screen with someone from a diverse background, I mean, obviously, uh, I like to think that I could hold space for, but then, the the approach is to give me who you are, right? Give me who you are. But again, my position is to do more listening than talking, right? Professional listener than I'm a professional
Right.
speaker. So it's important that out of diversity, I have to learn as I go, training, but I also learn
Mhm.
because everybody shows up, although it's uniquely different as well.
Yeah. That's a great segue for this question here, because I was just about, I'm asking now is how has your perspective on mental health evolved throughout your career?
That's good. I think it has evolved by coming two things and trending, and they both have their pluses and minuses. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. It has evolved a normal part of every discussion, but it has also been abused because it has been overused or abnormally used, just life challenge, right? So now, because we have access to the mental health is trending a lot of things, right? Oh, I'm tired, or it's my mental health, or I'm depressed, or I'm my anxiety, or I got ADHD, or I'm neurodivergent. Like we are sub, right? And we are coddling ourselves, and I'm just generally speaking, because we have this language and we use it out of context. So instead of really building up resilience, because life is lifing, they now sort of second guess and lean on the fact that they have this language to say, oh, that I'm diagnosed unprofessionally. I just think it's overused because of the access to the information, and because it's actually misinformation at this point.
Mhm. Can you describe your experience working with individuals who have limited access to mental health resources?
With individuals who have limited what? Sorry.
Mental health resources.
Resources, is that it? Okay.
Yes.
Um, well, yes, I do. I provide support in a number of different ways. I provide it with give educational material online on a daily basis. I provide in a private Facebook group. I have a men's group session that I do in person in Atlanta, right? A lot of different ways for people who have limited resources to stay in the game, right? It, not everybody can come one-on-one sessions, right? There is a
Right.
luxury for a lot of people, particularly in this time. And I'm committed to showing up every day through technology, some information, some relief, some accesses, but more daily online or in my Facebook group or in my email group to let people know. And you don't have to pay me money to sit in a one-on-one.
I think your something is going on with your internet because you like went like all the way blurry and then you came back in and now it's kind of like going like I don't know, what do you want to call it?
Can you see and hear me now?
Is yeah, now it's yes, sir. Do you do you think maybe do you want to like do you think we need to maybe you know, like reschedule this for another time?
If it's disruptive, we may have to. I don't want to mess up your show or disappoint the the listeners. I'm happy, but if you give me a second, I'll check one before we make the determination. Let me just
Okay.
see. See if we can make. On this end, brother. I have no idea what's going on there. All of my stuff appears. But let's try this. Hold on. Okay, how about now?
Okay, I can see you. But you're like in slow motion.
All right. Let's turn this light around. Let's see. I think I got my backup computer over here. So let's see.
Okay, let's try this. So what role does community play in mental health awareness and support?
Let's try this. We're coming. How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you. Let me ask this question again. That's what role does community?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, let's try this. What we got?
Yes. Yes. Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hear you.
How we doing?
Okay, now I can hear you.
All right.
Can you
Let's
hear?
see how this
Yes. Can
works.
you hear me? Okay.
I can.
I was asking, what? Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
I can.
So I was asking, what role does community play in mental health awareness and support?
The community is everything. Most of us are damaged through relationships and into community. So it's important we heal through relationship and community. Healing is not, delineated to just sessions, right? There's a whole process. Community is every most important parts. It's one thing to get your own strategies and tools to support your well-being, but if you go to the same environment, it's just going to be a matter of time before the digression sets in. So we as support need to hold space for those of us who are exhibiting the most when it comes to our mental health and emotional well-being.
So what role does what are some common misconceptions about mental health that you'd like to address?
That's good. I think one of the common mental health misconceptions is that everything is not mental health. Everything is not about anxiety or stress or gaslighting or narcissism or neurodivergent or depression or grief. Lots of things are just life challenges, and it's part of the growth and development of being a human being, right? We are good for sort of throwing bounce passes to the mental health player, right? Like everything, it's leaning towards mental health. That's the misconception. It ain't mental health. You just got to grow up. There's some of us that really, really got to do some real personal development work, right? There's basic things, right? If you lack discipline or things of that nature, it ain't a mental health challenge. Just get your butt up, practice, make your bed, go to the right? Work with a personal trainer. Sometimes it's not mental health. Sometimes it's a coach, right? Sometimes you need to go to the physical doctor. Sometimes it's the dentist, right? There's a lot of things that come into place. Everything, the misconception, Brother Charles, everything ain't mental health. Every child saying that he's struggling with anxiety may just be lazy, right? They're around. It could be the diet. It could be sugar. Everything is not mental health. We have abused this notion of mental health.
Wow. How do you maintain your own mental well-being while working in such an emotional, demanding field?
This is one of the most regular questions I get. I even get this from my clients, like, how you together? And I tell them to do a pretty good job to take care of myself long before I interact with other human beings, right? I actively work out, right? I spend time in nature, right? I eat a certain way, right? I'm not obviously perfect by any stretch, but I do an adequate job. I owe it to my clients to be at optimal health so that I could support them, so that they could lean when they need to. And so behind the scenes, and I do a good job of documenting that online through social media, is I show that I'm working out. I show that I go to conferences. I show nature just so people know, as they say, like I really do the work. I'm on the other side of the screen using all this clinical jargon to point out how I am. No, it's a whole holistic approach to living. And that's how it's so. Yeah, a tight schedule, refrain from different destructive behaviors, and really nurture myself in relationships that are important to me.
Let's transition to the work you do as an author. Can you tell us what motivated you to write your first book?
So that's a great question. So I wanted to have some document I used, or how I used to come out of some of my challenges. So my first book was that, right? Like it's 8 approach, right? How to turn, obstacles into opportunities. It's mostly autobiographical, and then at the end of each, it gives a lesson. And so it was the 5 years that I started off this interview with Brother Charles, like I have challenges. I went through my own emotional exhaustion challenges. So I wanted to document it. So I did my first book. I probably wrote out about 50 chapters. I narrowed the book down. And since then, as you can see the books behind me on this shelf, since then, I just been documenting just my thoughts and standpoint. Not in an industry standpoint, but from my standpoint, so that hopefully somebody can be inspired by it.
Can you elaborate on the themes you explore in your writings?
Yeah, mostly personal development, right? And there's a little bit of mental health and clinical stuff, but mostly personal development. There's a huge spirit in all of my writings. There's a huge relationship, right? Everything is relational. There's two intelligence that I talk about. Of course, we throw around, but what we don't talk about is relational intelligence and social intelligence. So a lot of my books contain those aspects. Yeah, you may be emotional, right? But what about your relational? Like, how well do you relate, right? There's a skill with being a highly relatable or relationally intelligent. So there's a theme that goes through that. And then I talk about love, right? Not just romantic, love and love for humanity. So those things are pretty prominent in all of my writings.
Wow. So just in that whole case of like with the emotional intelligence and the emotional relations and the emotional consciousness, help us to understand what are the differences between those, and how can people differentiate those in knowing exactly what's what and how to use those?
So yeah, I mean, they're used in different contexts. It really just depends on the context, right? But when we talk about just like emotional intelligence, and that has to do with your ability to be literate, right? Space not only for your emotional state, which involves your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, but those are right. And so that's the basket of emotional intelligence. When it comes to relational intelligence, how well you manage people's access, right? There's an intelligence, right? Well, it's your ability to be with people, right? Right. The access that you allow and the access you provide. So there's some relational intelligence. I know a lot of people, what keeps them from really thriving is they need support and work from a relational standpoint. And that's because of a number of reasons. So then there's the social intelligence, right? Like how you show up in different social arenas, right? there's some non-transferable. So you get to be one way, like we have this authentic self where there's some social intelligence you need to have in addition to being your authentic self. You can't be authentically at you to the boardroom necessarily, right? So there's a social intelligence that it goes that it means to be your authentic self.
So, who do you hope will benefit most from your books and why?
So my hope for people, not necessarily. That's a great question. I'll tell you why. I don't hope that people benefit from my books, right? My books are a snapshot of where I was when I could read any of my books and be like, oh, I see it differently at this point, which I think is the point of writing. Any writer who's wrote, all of my books close to 10 years old or older. So obviously, right, I've outgrown them. I see why you gotta keep writing if that's your aspiration. Sort of like an entertainer, right? Yeah. Your best album is the one you got. So I don't really live and die by things that I wrote, right? I'm actually looking to reread my books and to, man, what was I thinking when I wrote that? So I tell people to read not only my books, but any book with a grain of salt. That's a snapshot in the moment. It wasn't designed for me to be some expert that I'm gonna have all the answers, not even for myself. It was Brother Charles, be courageous enough to say, I'm gonna put some printed material out into the universe and I'm gonna let it land how it land. But it wasn't me to be this professional writer standing on stage and read my book. I mean, not many people read. And if they do, they ain't finishing books because of the discipline. And people will listen to your podcast and your show before they'll read a book, right? So they'll buy books, but they ain't reading them, right? If you really, right, and I mean that with the utmost, I mean that with the utmost respect, because they'll buy your book and would rather log on and hear your thoughts in real time because you got a podcast before they read your book. And then after they listen to your podcast enough, they be like, "Well, I really ain't got to read this book now because I heard them." So, yeah, I'm kind of funny when it comes to book. I get questions all the time, Brother King. People ask me about my book, so I don't promote them much. I actually got about 5 more books in me. I just been procrastinating, and I have manuscripts from them, just procrastinating on getting them to my editors and the publisher to get them out.
Let me ask you this, because as I understand it, we go through this show and everything. I think from what you say, how your journey started, when you say you was going through your mental health thing on your own, and as I listen to you now, it's like you're like the wind. You're like just free flowing, easy going, and it's like here you go. So to get to that point, and from where you was, what were some of the things that really happened dramatically to help you to get to this stage here? Because I mean, I'm sure that this is a person that a lot of people like.
Yeah, now I done switched to my other laptop, so I ain't sure who this on at this point. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Brother Charles?
Yes, sir, I hear you.
I don't hear you, my brother.
Okay. No, I was. I didn't say
So
anything.
well too,
I
bro.
was just. Huh?
I got you. Did you?
Okay. I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I guess with the technical difficulties, we're gonna go ahead and just end the stream, and hopefully we can get Dr. Curtis back at another time. Thank you all for listening and watching this show tonight.